Quick demo of this video series. With this video, we have started a new video series on building complete Angular Material application with practical examples. In upcoming series of videos, we will learn how to use Angular 6 Material. We will have discussion on form design, CRUD operations, pop-up dialog, data table with paging, sorting and filtering, and much more. In this video, we will design the Angular Material form for CRUD operations containing almost all important controls like input text box, drop-down list, radio button, checkbox, date picker, etc. So please watch till the end of this video series. What's up YouTube? Welcome to CodAffection. In this, we will design the form for CRUD operation. Inside the form, we will have the most frequently used CRUD components like text box, drop-down list, radio button, checkbox, and date picker. In the next video, we will implement the actual CRUD operation with Firebase. In following tutorials, we will discuss Angular Material data table, pop-up window, and much more with practical example. As you know, Angular Material is a package or tool for Angular developers. It contains high-quality UI components from Google Material Design. So here we have the official website for Angular Material, material.angular.io, and here we have the website for Google Material Design. In last few months, Google updated their products with Material Design. For example, here we have the new interface for Gmail. And this new interface is much better and impressive than the old one. So I hope this is an inspiration for new Angular Material developers. So let's get started with our project. First of all, let's open the folder where we want to create the project. So here is the folder and select the folder. Inside this folder, we have to create a new Angular 6 project. For that, I will use the integrated terminal from this IDE. Click on terminal here. You can use this Angular CLI command, ng new, then application name. I will name this application as complete Angular Material app. Hit enter. So here we have successfully created the Angular 6 project. Here you can see the new folder with project name complete Angular Material app. Now we have to install Angular Material and related packages. So first of all, we have to navigate inside the project folder here. Now we have the npm command, npm install, then --save. In short, we can do this --s. First of all, we have the main package, Angular Material, and then we have Angular CDK. In order to work with animations, we have to install this package, Angular Animations. Hit enter. So here we have installed the Angular Material and related packages in Angular 6 application. All of these instructions are given in the official guides here under getting started. So here we have the commands, npm commands for installing required packages. Finally, we have to use a theme from Angular Material. So here we have the pre-built themes from Angular. So we will be using this second theme here, indigo pink.css. Now we have to include the corresponding CSS in our project. So open styles.css here. And then we have to add the @import statement for the style sheet. Along with this theme style sheet, we have to add a style sheet reference for material icons that you can see here. Just search for material icons. So these are the available icons. In order to use these icons, we have to use this style sheet reference here. Under this tab 6, you can see this reference. Just copy this. Then back to the project, open index.html page. Just above this head end tag, we can add this style sheet reference. Now in order to show you the application structure that we want to build in this, I'm going to create a new text file. So click on this new file here. I will name this file as application structure. Inside that I will paste this structure. So in this application we have to create two components, employees and employee. So with this series of tutorials we will discuss topics related to Angular Material based on the employee register application. We will deal with details of employee like full name, mobile, email, department, then gender, etc. So first of all we have to create two components, employees and employee, and inside the shared folder we have the employee service class. So first of all we have to create the components. So currently we are inside the project folder. In order to create a new component you can do this ng g for generate c for component. First of all we have the employees parent component. So here we have created the parent component employees. From application structure it is clear that we have this parent component employees. Inside that we have the child component employee. We can use the same previous command with some modifications. In order to see the previous command, just hit up arrow and we have to create the component inside the folder employees. Then component name will be employee. Hit enter. So here we have created the child component employee. Now we have to create one service class inside this shared folder. So we can use this command ng g for generate, s for service. We have to create the service class inside the folder shared, which is not created, but when we execute this command, if there is no folder with shared name, it will be created along with the creation of service class. We have to create the service class with name employee service. So we just need to type employee here. Hit enter. So that's it. Here we have the shared folder. Inside that we have the service class. Along with this TypeScript file, which is the file with extension ts, we have another file with extension spec.ts, which is for test purpose. We are not going to test this application, so let me remove this file. Now enough with the creation, we have to run this application. For that I will open a fresh terminal, click on this plus button here, navigate inside the project folder. Then you can use this command ng serve --open. In short, you can just type O. Hit enter. It will build and open the application in your default web browser. So this is how the fresh Angular 6 application looks like. Now we can start designing our application. So inside this default component HTML, app component HTML, we want to show the parent component employees. This one, employees. So for that we can use the component selector, which is here inside the component TypeScript file app-employees. Now let me copy this and paste inside this HTML here. Now we have to create a tag with this selector. Okay. Now inside the employees component HTML, I want to show a top toolbar containing application header. Instead of this default paragraph, we need a div with class container. So here we have the div with class container. Inside this div we can show the toolbar from Angular Material. So here we have the corresponding tag mat-toolbar. For each Angular Material component we will have this prefix for each component mat. Now in order to understand how to use Angular Material components, here you can see the official documentation. Just go to these components here, and inside this navigations you can see toolbar here. For each Angular Material component description we have three tabs: overview, API and examples. Inside the overview tab we will have the basic usage of the component. Below that we will have the various configurations for the component. Inside this API tab, first of all we will have the import statement related to the component module. Below that we will have the in-depth details like directives, properties related to this module. And inside this last tab, examples, we will have the various usage of the component. So for this Mat Toolbar component here, we have to import this module, Mat Toolbar module, that we can do in a bit. Before that, inside this Mat Toolbar, we need to show a span. Inside that, we will have the application name. I will name this application as Angular 6 Material. Before and after this span, I will add one span like this. Both of them have this class fill remaining space, so that we can position this span in the center. Now we have to define this CSS class inside the default style sheet, which is styles.css here. First of all, we have the div container. Inside that, we have modified the margin and we have defined this class fill remaining space with flex modification. Now back to the component HTML here. As we have seen inside this documentation, in order to use toolbar, we have to import this module, Mat Toolbar module. Like this, for any Angular Material component, we have to import corresponding module inside our project. Whether it is input element or button or drop-down. Normally, we will import the module inside the default module file app.module.ts. If we add modules for each Angular Material component, this file becomes messy. So in order to handle this problem, I will create an extra module here. So just click on this plus button here. In order to create a new module, you can use this Angular CLI command ng for generate m4 module. I will name this module as material. First of all, we have to navigate inside the project folder, then run the command. So here we have successfully created the module material here. Inside that, we have the module TypeScript file. First of all, I will add an import statement for Angular Material. Unlike other import statements, in order to reduce the number of import statements here, with this single line, we have imported all modules from Angular Material with this alias material. Now from this Angular Material, we have to import this class here, Mat Toolbar module. Let me copy this. Then we have to import this from material dot Mat Toolbar module. Now along with this imports array, we need exports array also. So here it is, exports. Inside that, we have to add the same module. Let me copy this and pasting inside this. Now we have to import this new module, material module, inside this default module class app.module.ts. So first of all, we have the import statement here. Now we need to add this material module inside this imports array here. Now let me save all of these modifications here, then back to the application. So here we have the toolbar. Just below this toolbar, we need to show the HTML from employee component, which is the child component for employees. So we have to modify this component HTML. Inside this component HTML, we will design the Angular Material form using reactive form approach or model driven approach. For that, first of all, we will define the form group inside the service class here. For reactive forms approach, we have to import these classes form group and form control from Angular forms. Now we can define a property of the type form group. So here we have the form, it is of the type form group class. And it is initialized with this constructor of form group. Inside that, we have to provide an object containing form controls. So here we have the first form control, which is equal to $key is equal to new form control, and here we have the default value, which is null. $key property is used as the primary key or unique identifier to identify each employee record from the collection. You will understand this record once we submit this form for inserting new employees. After this property, we have another control for full name, which is equal to new form control, and we have the default value as empty string. Then we have email, then mobile, then we have city, and here we have gender. For gender, we will have a radio button control. After that, we have department. For department, we will have a select control or drop down list. Then we have hire date, it will be a date picker. Finally, we have this is permanent control, it will be a checkbox to identify whether a user is permanent or not. By default, it will be false. Now, in order to use this form group property in other component classes, we have to inject this in app.module.ts file. So back to app.module.ts file. First, let's add the import statement for employee service class. Now we have to add this employee service class inside this providers array here. Now using this form group property, we have to design the form inside the component employee.component.html. For that, first of all, we have to create an object of this employee service class inside the corresponding TypeScript file employee component.ts file. So here we have the same import statement for employee service. Now we have to create an object of the employee service inside the constructor, which is here service is of the type employee service class. Instead of this default paragraph, I will add a form element. So here we have the form element, and we are going to design this form using the service class property form, which is of the type form group. For that, we can add this attribute form group, which is equal to service.form. In order to work this reactive form approach or model driven approach, we have to import the reactive forms module inside app.module.ts file here. So here it is, import reactive forms module from Angular forms. Now we have to add the same class inside this imports array here. Now back to the component HTML, I'm going to add a custom class for this form here, which is normal form. I will define this class inside the styles.css with updated margin. Now inside this form, we are going to divide the form into two grid columns. Corresponding documentation can be seen here. Go to components, then layout. Here we have grid list. So for this particular form here, we need two columns with one row. You can see the basic usage of the component here. For this, we have to import this module GridList Module. So we can do that inside the new module here, material. Just add the module GridList Module inside imports array and the exports array. Then back to the component HTML. Here we have the grid list component. It has two columns. Since we have one row, we don't need to specify number of rows. We will specify the row height as 300 pixels. Inside this, we need two columns. So here we have two mat grid tile. We will start with the first column. Inside that, I will add a div with class controllers container. Now we will define the class inside the styles.css here. For the class, we will set the width as 100% and we will have a 5% padding. Inside this div, here we have the first control, which is input element. It's of the type hidden, and here we have the form control name, which is equal to $key. That means here we have created a component for this $key, which is the primary key for the employee. Okay, so that is why we have hidden this property here. Now just below this hidden field, we just need to create a text box for full name. For that, first of all, we will add this mat form field, generally which is used to enclose more than one Angular material. For now, here we have the input element, and we will set the form control name as full name. In order to convert this normal input element into a mat input, we have to add this directive mat input here. After that, we will set the placeholder as full name. Mat input documentation is given here. Under form controls, you can see this input. So for any input text box, we have to add this directive mat input. You can see various examples here with prefix and suffix. You can check them later. For full name, we need a normal text box. In upcoming tutorials, we will discuss input with prefix or suffix elements like this. So for this component, we have to import this class here, MatInput Module. And for this form field here, we have to import this. Here you can see the API mat form field module. So let's import these two module classes inside this material module. So here we have field module and input module. We have to add the same inside the exports array also. Now back to the component HTML. Currently inside this form field we have a single input control. Later we will have more controls when we implement validations. Like this full name, we need to add form field and input controls for remaining properties. So here we have the control for email, then mobile and city. Now let's look how the form looks with these controls. For that, open parent component HTML, which is here employees component HTML. Just below the toolbar we need to show the HTML from the child component. So here we have to add the child component selector app-employee. Now let me save all of these modifications here, then back to the application. So here we have the 4 input controls inside the first grid column. Here we have aligned each control in horizontal. Instead of that, I want to show them in vertical order, so that one control per one line. For that we can add the styles here. Inside the div, all of the component width will be set to 100%. Okay, now let me save this, then back to the application. Oh boy, here we have another problem. Only 2 controls are listed. Let me check the inspect. So it is related to browser animation module, I think. So we have to add the corresponding module in app-module.ts file. So here we have the corresponding import statement, browser animation module from platform browser animations. Now we have to add the same inside the imports array. Let me save this, back to the application. Now let's add remaining controls inside the second column in grid. So here we have the second grid column. Inside that we will have the same div that we have added here, div with class controllers container. First of all, I will add radio button for selecting gender. For that, first of all, I will add a div with class add bottom padding. This bottom padding is required for the proper alignment of controls like radio button and checkbox. So here we have to define the class with padding 10 pixel. Inside the div we will have the radio button. Before that, let's look the documentation. Here we have the form controls. Inside that we have radio button. So this is how it looks. Okay, so in order to work with this, we have to import this module. So open the material module in our project. We can add the module like this. Then back to the component HTML, we can do this. We will have this mat radio group and we will set the form control name to gender. Inside that we need 3 radio buttons. Okay, one for male and corresponding value will be 1, then female, and for other types of gender value will be 3. Now if you save this, you can see the newly updated radio buttons for male, female and others. When we see them, it looks stick to each other. So we have to separate them. For that, we will define this style here. This is particularly for the radio button. We will add the margin left as 5 pixel. Now let me save this, back to the application. Now it's almost fine. If you are not happy, you can increase the margin. Now let's look how to add drop-down list or select control in Angular Material. So let's have a look at the documentation here. Here we have the select control. So this is how the default control look like. You can see various modifications here. Basically for this control we have to import this mat select module. So corresponding module will be mat select module. Let's add them in imports and exports array. Back to the HTML. Now let's add a form field for select control. Inside that we have the mat select control, and then we will set the form control name as department, which is already defined in Angular Material form group, and here we have the placeholder as department. Now inside this control, here we have the first default option, which is none. For options, we have to use this mat option tag. For now, I will show the remaining options from a static array. In the next video, we will convert this into a dynamic drop-down list. So first of all, we have to define the static array in the corresponding TypeScript file. Departments, it contains 3 options for department 1, department 2 and department 3. Now back to the component HTML, we have to iterate through this static array here. So I will add the ng container, and here we have the ng4 directive, and we will iterate through this static array with this department variable. So here we have the option mat option. I will set the value with this string interpolation department.id, and here we have the value department.value. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Back to the application. Boom, that's it. Department 1, department 2 and so on. Now we have 2 more controls like this. We have to add date picker for selecting hire date for the employee. How we can add date picker in Angular Material? Let's have a look in our documentation. Under this form controls, you can see the date picker. Here we have the basic usage of the date picker. You can see some variations also here. Okay, as per the documentation, you can see that we have to import this mat date picker module. But in practical, along with this module, we have to import the dependent module native date module. So let's look how to work with this date picker. First of all, we have the form field, and here we have the input control, and we will set the form control as hire date, and here we have the mat input. That means this is a normal text box, and here we have the mat date picker, which is equal to picker. Then placeholder will be hire date. After that, we have a toggle, that means which is responsible for this toggle here, this one. Okay, not this calendar, just this picker. So we have added that toggle as a suffix, and here we have the 4 attribute picker. So this is how we connect these 2 controls. After that, we have this mat date picker, which is responsible for this calendar here. Okay, now before showing this date picker in our form, let me add a checkbox to identify whether a user is permanent or not. You can see the checkbox documentation here. Checkbox, we have to import this module mat checkbox module. Here you can see the basic usage, and here we have some examples with some various applications. So back to the project. Inside the material module, we have to add this module mat checkbox module in both of the arrays. Then back to the component HTML. First of all, we have a div with class add bottom padding, which is already added here. Then inside that, we have the control mat checkbox form control name is equal to is permanent. So here we have done with input form controls. Let me save this. Back to the application here. Something went wrong. What's happening? Let me check the inspect. Yes, we forgot to import modules related to date picker. So here it is, date picker module, which is already defined in our documentation, but this is another dependent module. So do not forget this dependent module. Let me copy these 2 modules, then pasting inside the exports array here. Save. Back to the application. Here we have the hire date, and here we have the checkbox. Now what do we do with these controls? We need a submit button, right? So we can do that here. We'll add another div here with class button row, and inside that we have one button for submit, and you can see the details of button in as per the documentation here. Under buttons, click on button here. Here we have the default button. For various types of UI interface, you can see here basic button, raised button, so and so. Color is set as primary, type will be submit, and text will be submit. After the submit button, we need a clear button. So here it is. So in order to work this button, we have to import this corresponding module, Mat button module. So open material module and we will add the button module here and here. Let me save all of these modifications. Back to the application here. Of course they will stick to each other unless we add a margin like we have done for this radio button. Let's open styles.css, then here it is. Let me save this, back to the application. So everything is fine now. Here we completed with form design. So this is how we can design forms in Angular Material with form group. Now let's look how we can implement validations inside this form. That means Angular Material validation. For that, first of all, we have to update the form group that we have defined inside the service class here. In order to work with validations, we have to import this new class validator from Angular Forms. Now I want to make this full name and mobile as a mandatory field so that we can pass through the constructor second parameter. So we will set this full name and this mobile as a required field. And for this email control, we have to verify the correct format of email. For that, we can add this validation here, validators.email. For this mobile text box, we need one more validation, which is mil length. So we can specify the validation like this, validators.mil length. It should at least contain 8 numbers. With that, we have defined validations inside this form group property here. Now we have to show validation indications or error messages in our HTML file, which is here employee.component.html. Since we have made this full name and mobile as a required or mandatory field, it is a best practice to add this asterisk mark for these two controls here. I will add this suffix with asterisk mark for both of these controls here so that user can easily identify this is a required field. Now in order to show the validation error about this control full name, we can do this. Mat error directive can be used. Inside that, we will show this message, this field is mandatory. This mat error directive is already defined inside this module here, form field module, that you can see in our documentation. Here we are inside the form field. Here you can see the first directive, mat error, single error message to be shown underneath the form field. Okay, like this we have to show error messages for this email and mobile. For email, we need to show the error message when we have an invalid email inside the text box. So we can do this. Invalid email address will be shown when there is an error due to email text box. Now for this mobile control, we have multiple validations. We have required validation and mil length. So let's look how we can show different error messages for different types of validations. For that, we will use the mat error directive with ngIf. So we can do this. We will show the error message, this field is mandatory when this condition becomes true. It checks whether we have any error or not. If we have any error and which is related to required, then we will show this error message. Otherwise, we will show this message, minimum 8 characters need when this condition satisfies. Now finally, I want to disable the form submit button when this form as a whole is not valid. So we can add this disabled attribute based on this condition here. We will add this disabled when this condition satisfied. That means the form as a whole is not valid. Let me save all of these modifications here. Back to the application. Initially this submit button is disabled, that means this form is not valid. You can see here full name and mobile are mandatory. Validation error message will show only when we leave that control as empty. Now you can see the error message, this field is mandatory. Now let's do the same with mobile. It is mandatory. Now if we enter some digits inside that, we have another validation, minimum 8 characters needed. So here it is. Finally, this form as a whole is valid. So here you can see that the submit button becomes enabled. Email is not mandatory, but if we enter something inside that, it should be in proper email format. Otherwise, we will have this validation error message, invalid email address. If you complete with a valid email, now this form as a whole is valid, and thereby we have enabled this submit button. So this is how to implement validations inside Angular forms. Now let's look how to clear these controls using this clear button here. Okay. For that, I will wire up a click event for this clear button. Now we have to define this onClear function inside the corresponding TypeScript file here. So here we have the onClear function. Inside that, first of all, we will clear the form group by calling this function here, reset function, from this form group property. When we call this reset function, all of the control value will become null. So we have to initialize the form controls to their initial default values. For that, I will define another function in our service class. It will be initialize form group. Now we have to define this function inside the service class here. It is as simple as this. Here we have the function initialize form group. In order to change the values of these form controls from this form group, we can call this set value function. Inside that, we will have another object containing default values of these controls here. Okay. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Back to the application. Let's look how this clear button works. Click on clear. In this part, we have completed with designing CRUD form using Angular Material form group. You can find the GitHub link in video description. In this video, we are going to implement Firebase CRUD operations inside this project, and later we will submit this Angular Material form in order to insert a new record into Firebase. In previous part, we have implemented this dropdown using a static array. We will create a department collection in our DB, and using that DB, we will list the items here inside this select component. So we will change this static dropdown into a dynamic one. Finally, I will show you how to build a notification message with Angular Material with the help of Angular Material component snack bar. So before starting with this Angular 6 project, I'm going to start with creating this Firebase project. For that, you have to go to this website console.firebase.google.com. Then click on this add project button here. I want to name this application as Angular Material CRUD. In short, I will name it as AM CRUD. Then accept these terms here. Click on create project. So here we have successfully created the project. Click on continue. Here we are inside the Firebase project dashboard. And go to database. Here we need to create a real-time database. So you can click on this create database button. Here we have two types of mode, logged mode and test mode. I will select the test mode because we can access the database without authentication. Now click on enable. Here you can see the warning, your security rules are defined as public. You can dismiss this notification. Now in order to work with this Firebase project, we have to install two NPM packages inside this Angular 6 project here. For that, I'm going to open one more terminal here. We are already inside the project folder, so we can right away run our npm command. So corresponding npm command will be something like this: npm i4 install, then --save, or in short you can type --s. First of all, we have to install the package Firebase and Angular Fire 2. Hit enter. So here we have successfully installed those two packages. Now we need to initialize them with Firebase project connection details. So back to the Firebase project, then click on this project overview. You can click on this web option here, then copy this specific object from here, then back to the project. Then inside this environments folder, you can see this file environment.ts. Inside this constant environment, I'm going to add one more property here. It will be Firebase config. Inside that, I will store the connection details that we have copied from the Firebase console. Now open app module.ts file, Then we need to add these two import statements for these two classes, Angular Fire module and Angular Fire database module from Angular Fire 2 module. Now we need to initialize this Angular Fire module using the connection details stored inside this environment.ts file. So I will add the import statement for this constant also. So here it is. Now we just need to add these two modules inside this imports array here. Angular Fire database module and Angular Fire module, and we need to call this function initialize app. Inside that we have to pass this constant Firebase config. So we just need to do this environment dot Firebase config. So far we have created Firebase project and we have configured this Angular 6 project with Firebase. Now let's implement Firebase CRUD operations. For that, open the service class here, employee service class. First of all, we have to import these two classes, Angular Fire database and Angular Fire list, from Angular Fire 2 database. Now we have to inject this Angular Fire database inside this service class here. Firebase, it's of the type Angular Fire database. Now we have to define a property of this type Angular Fire list so that we can retrieve inserted records from Firebase DB. So here it is. Employee list, it's of the type Angular Fire list. Now we can start defining functions for Angular Firebase CRUD operations. First of all, I will define a function in order to retrieve all inserted records into this employee list here. So here is the function get employees. In order to retrieve the inserted records, we can do this. Here we have the injected Angular Fire database object Firebase, Firebase.list. Inside that we have the collection employees, which is a node in our Firebase DB which we have not yet created. Once we insert a record, we will have this node employees. Under this node we will save the new records. So inside this employee list we will have the collection, but it will be of the type Angular Fire list. In order to work with that, it would be better if we have an observable. So we can do this. We will call this snapshot changes function from the object so that it will return an observable from the Angular Fire list. Later we will discuss how we can make use of the observable return from this function. So first of all, here we have the function for insert operation, insert employee. It has a single parameter employee. It contains details of new employee. In order to insert a new record, we can do this. We will call this push function from the Angular Fire list object, employee list. Inside that we just need to pass an object containing details of new employee. So here it is. Full name is equal to employee.fullname. So this employee object must contain details of new employee. Like this full name, we can pass remaining properties like this. We have email, mobile, city, gender, department, head date, and is permanent. So it will insert a new employee into Firebase DB collection under this node employees. When we insert a new record into Firebase DB collection, it will automatically create the primary key or $key. Now let's do the update operation. Here we have the function update employee. It contains a single parameter employee. In order to update an existing record, we can do this. We will call this update function from the Angular Fire list object. As a first parameter, we can pass the primary key or $key of the record. As a second parameter, we will pass an object containing updated details of the employee. Here we have the final CRUD operation delete. We have this function delete employee. It contains a single parameter $key. It's of the type string. In order to remove an existing record, we can do this. We will call this function remove from this Angular Fire list object, and we will pass the primary key $key here. So here we have defined one function for each CRUD operations. Now we have to submit this Angular Material form so that we can insert a new employee into Firebase by calling this function here insert employee. So let's look how we can do that. Here we have the employee HTML and here we have the form element. Now we have to wire up submit event. So I will add this submit event here. When we submit this form, we will call this function on submit. Now we have to define this function inside the TypeScript file here. So here we have the function on submit. Inside that, first of all, we have the if statement to check whether the form is valid or not. We have added few validations in previous video, and with this if statement here, we will check whether the form is valid by checking this property valid from the form group property from our service class. Now in order to insert a new record after the submission, we can do this. We will call this function here insert employee. So we will do this. This .service.insert employee function can be called. Inside this function, we have to pass the object employee containing details of the new employee. When we submit this form, in order to retrieve values from these controls, we can do this. We will have the value property from the form group object. So this will insert a new employee into Firebase DB collection. Now we have to reset this form controls to the initial state. So here we will call the reset function here form.reset. After that we have to initialize these controls to the initial default value. For that we can call this function initial form group like we have done inside this onClear event. So inside this onSubmit event, we have called this function insert employee from the service class. Inside that, in order to insert a new record, we have called this push function from employee list. In order to work this function here, we have to first initialize this property employee list that we have done inside this get employees function. So before any of these CRUD operations insert, update and delete, we have to initialize this property employee list. So we have to call this get employees function before any of these following functions. So that we can do inside the ng on a lifecycle hook here. This dot service dot get employees. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Now let's fill this form for a new employee record. Now let's submit this form. Form is reset to the initial state. Now let's check the Firebase DB whether we have inserted the new record or not. Here we are inside the project overview. Go to database. Here we have the newly created node employees. Under that we have the new employee record. Here we have the primary key or $key. Here we have the city. For department we have the value 2. For department we have selected second item, corresponding value is 2. Now we have the email, full name, gender is stored as 2. We have selected female, corresponding value is 2. We have is permanent as true. Finally we have the mobile number. Now inside this video we have to discuss 2 more points. First of all, here we have the static dropdown. We have to convert that into a dynamic dropdown. Second point, we have to show a notification after submitting this form using snackbar component from Angular Material. So first of all, we will convert this static dropdown into a dynamic one. For that, I will add a new collection, departments. Inside that, I will add entries manually. You can design another form for department CRUD operations. Considering the time we have, I will enter or create the collection manually. So let's create the new collection, departments. Inside that we will insert new 4 departments. First of all, we have the key value. I will set it as ABC1. We have to make sure that it won't repeat in remaining elements. Inside that we have 2 properties, name and code. Department name and department code. First of all, we have name, corresponding value will be accountant. Then we need one more property, department code. Code, I will set it as ACC. Now click on add. So here we have created the new collection departments. Inside that we have a single item with key ABC. It is for accountant. Corresponding code will be ACC. Like this, we have to add 3 more departments. For that, you can click on this add button here. So finally, we have inserted 4 departments under departments node here: accountant, software engineer, developer, and team leader. Now using this Firebase DB collection departments, we have to update this static dropdown here. For that, I will create a separate department service class inside this shared folder here. So let me open one more terminal here. Here we are inside the project folder. In order to create the service class, we can do this ng g4 generate s4 service. We have to create the new service class inside this shared folder. Class name will be department service. So we just need to pass department here, hit enter. Newly created service class department.service.ts can be seen here. Along with that, we have the test file. I will remove that. Now inside this service class, we have to retrieve these departments under this node here. For that, we have to import classes from Angular Fire 2 like we have done inside this employee service class. So let me copy this import statement from here and pasting inside this department service class. We have to inject this Angular Fire database. So let me copy this and pasting inside this department service constructor. Here I will define 2 properties. First of all, we have department list and array. Inside this department list, we will retrieve all of these collections here and we will convert that into an array and we will save that array inside this array property here. So all of these conversions can be done inside this constructor here. First of all, we will populate this list from this Firebase collection departments. For that, we can do this. This dot department list is equal to Firebase dot list. Inside that, we have the node departments. Now we have to convert this Angular file list into an array here. For that, we have to iterate through the list here. So better we have to convert this into an observable. For that, we can do this. We will call this snapshot changes function. It will convert this Angular file list into an observable. So we can subscribe to that observable here. Inside that, we have this arrow function with this single parameter list, and we will do this. Here we have the array and we will generate the array from this list here. We will call this map function. Inside that, we have another function with this single parameter item. And we just need to do this. We will return an object from the function containing properties from this collection here. So this will return an object containing these 2 properties, code and name. And here we have applied 3.destructuring syntax from JavaScript. So that properties inside this object here, name and code, can be a part of the new object here. Along with properties name and code, we need this $key or primary key of the item. For that, we can do this. Item.key will give the corresponding item $key value. So this is how we can retrieve collection from Firebase DB, and here we have converted into an array here. Now we have to inject this service class inside the app.module.ts file here, so that we can make use of this department service inside other component classes. Now open this employee component.typescript file here. In order to use this array here, we have to create an object of this service, department service, inside the component TypeScript file here. So I will add the import statement for department here, and we have to create a property of the type here. Department service, it's of the type department service class. Now open the component HTML here. Currently we are using this static array here. Instead of that, we have the array from the service class department service dot array, and we have to change this value department dot dollar key, which is the primary key for the item, and for the option value I will concat the code and the name of department. So let me copy this and pasting here, and I will separate the code and name with a hyphen. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Before that, let me remove the previous static array from here. Save all of these changes. Back to the application here. So here we have created a dynamic dropdown in Angular Material from this Firebase collection departments. Finally, I want to show a notification message after a successful submission of the form. That means we will learn how to create toast message in Angular Material. For that, we will be using snackbar component from Angular Material. So first of all, let's have a look in our official documentation, Angular Material. Go to components. Then under pop-ups and models, you can see snackbar component. So here we have a basic demo of the application. It shows this pop-up notification here. In order to work with this component, we have to import this module here, MatteInput Module. So we can import that inside our extra module material here, MatteInput Module. We have to import the same here also. For working with pop-up notification in Angular Material, I'm going to create a separate service class inside this shared folder here. In order to create the service class, I will use the previous Angular CLI command. Just hit up arrow and we can make the modification here. We want to create notification service class, so I will just type notification here. Hit enter. Newly created TypeScript file can be seen here. I will delete this test file with extension spec.ts. In order to work with the component, we have to import these two classes from the Angular Material, MatteSnackbar and MatteSnackbarConfig. So here we have the basic class, and this config class is used for the customization of the component based on our requirement, like positioning, addition of extra CSS class, delay of component, etc. Now I will create a property of this class MatteSnackbar inside this constructor here. In order to show a success notification, I will define this function here with a single parameter msg, which is message, which is to be shown inside the notification. In order to show the snackbar component, we can do this. We will call the open function from the object snackbar. Inside that, we can pass this message, and as a second parameter we can pass the action. In this case, we will set the action as empty. Here inside this documentation, you can see that this part is the action. We don't need the action, so I will set it as empty string here. Now let's call this success function inside the form submit event. After that, we can customize the snackbar component. So here we have the import statement for the notification service. Now inside this submit event here, we can do this. We will call the success function from the notification service class. Inside the function, we have passed the message submitted successfully. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Back to the application. In order to see that notification, we have to first fill this form, then we have to click this submit button. So it will take some work. I am too lazy, so I will move that into this button, click event clear. So let me cut this and paste inside this on clear function. Once we customize this notification as per our requirement, I will move that back to this on submit function. Let me save this, then back to the form here, click on clear. So here we have the basic toast message. We have to customize this as per our need. So back to the notification service class here. In order to customize the notification, we have to create an object of this class snackbarConfig. So here it is, config, it's of the type MatteSnackbarConfig. It is a normal object. Inside that we can configure or define the properties of the notification or toast message. So all of the properties for this class is defined inside the documentation here. Inside the API tab, you can see here a lot of them, but for this application we will use some of them. So first of all, we have the duration. I will set it as 3 seconds. Here we have to specify in millisecond. Then we have the horizontal position. I will set it as right. Then we have the vertical position. I will set it as top. Now let's pass this config as a third parameter inside this open function here. This dot config. Let me save this. Back to the application. Click on clear. So here we have the notification. Now in order to change the appearance of this notification, we have to have a privilege to add some extra classes. So let's look how we can do that. For that, we can use the panel class property from the config object. Since we have more than one class, we have passed an array containing notification and success class. Now we have to define CSS rules for these two classes inside the styles.css here. Now let me save all of these modifications. Back to the application here. Click on clear. Boom. Here we have a nice pop-up notification. Now let's move that notification into the submit event. Let me cut this and paste inside this on submit function here. Okay. You can download this project source code from the GitHub link given below in video description. Now in this video, we are going to list all of these employees in Angular Material data table. So here we have the overview of summary of this video tutorial. We will list all of the employees collection inside this Angular Material. We will discuss the mandatory features of a data table like sorting, then paging and filtering. Here we have the same project from previous tutorial. We will start with creating new component employee list. Inside that we will deal with list of employees. We have to create that component as a child component for this employees component. So here we have opened the terminal. Now let's run the ng command. Ng g for generate, c for component. We have to create that component inside employees folder. Component name will be employee -list. Hit enter. So here we have the newly created component employee list. Now inside this new component employee list, we have to retrieve all the inserted employees from this Firebase collection here. In order to retrieve these records, we have already written a function inside the service class here, employee service. So here is the function get employees. Now we just need to call this function from this component here. So that we can do inside this ng onIt lifecycle hook. Before that, we have to inject this employee service class inside the component. So I will create an object of the employee service inside this constructor here. Now let's add the import statement for this service class. For that, you can use this shortcut here, hold Control, then press period. Now place the cursor on the service class, hold Control, then press period, then select the appropriate import statement. So here it is. Now inside the ng onIt lifecycle hook, we can call the function get employees. So here we go. We will call the get employees function. It will return an observable. So we can subscribe to that observable here. Now inside this subscribe function, we have to convert that Angular file list into an array. Exactly similar procedure is done in previous tutorial for department. So here is the procedure. Okay, so same can be done for this employees collection also. So here we have the callback function with a single parameter list. Inside that we can do this. We will have the array variable and we will do this. We will call the map function from this list parameter, and inside that we will have another callback function
with single parameter item. Inside the function, we will return an object containing employees details. So for that, we will do this. So this function item.payload.val will return an object containing these much employees details. Also, we have used 3.destructuring syntax from JavaScript. So all of the properties from this object can be a part of this new object here. Now along with these properties, we have to have this primary key or $key. So we can do this. We have added that $key from this object item.key. Finally, inside this array property, we have a list of employees. Now let's look how we can show this array in Angular Material data table. For that, let's have a look in our documentation, Angular Material. Then go to components. Here we have data table. Click on table. So here we have the basic usage of Angular Material table. Of course, it is a big component compared to components that we have discussed so far. First of all, let's add the required module. It will be MatTable module. So back to the project, then add the corresponding import statement inside the material module. So let's add the parent module, which is MatTable module. Inside these two arrays, imports and exports. Instead of rendering the table using this array property here, we will convert that into another object of the type MatTable data source, which is another class from the MatTable module. Now I will define a property of the type here, list data, which is of the type MatTable data source. Now we just need to do this. We will convert the array into list data object. Now we can use this list data to render the data table. Before that, I will define an array like this. Display columns, which is of the type string array, and I will initialize that array with a single item, which is full name. Means inside this array, we will name each columns that we have to show in our Angular Material data table. First of all, I will show you how to display a full name inside the table, and then we will show the rest of the columns. Sorry, we have to move this initialization after the map function. So I will do this. Now open component HTML, employee list component HTML here. Instead of this default paragraph, I will add a div with class MatElevation Z8, which is a class defined in Angular Material. Inside that, we can add the mat table like this. Inside that, we can add the mat table like this. Now we can set the data source that we have initialized inside this ng-only lifecycle hook list data. So we can do this. Data source is equal to list data. Now we have to define template for table header and body. For that, we can do this. We will add these two tags here. I will define what they means actually. So this is for the header template. We will use this tag mat header row. And for the element, we have applied this directive here, mat header row def. Actually, it will apply the templates of header row. By header row, we mean by this part here, row which contains the column header. Into that directive, we have passed the string array containing full name only. We can discuss the use of this array later. Below that, we have this mat row element. Same as the header row directive, we have another directive here, mat row def, which captures or applies characteristics of table body. Inside that, we have passed this array displayed columns like we have done in header row. Along with that, we have this variable row, which is used for the creation or rendering of the table body. So here we have defined templates for header and body of the table. Now we have to define template for each cell in both header and body of the table. For that, we can do this. We have ng container. Inside that, first of all, we will have this directive mat column def, which is equal to full name. With this directive, we have named the column as full name. this column name, full name, should be there inside this array here, displayed columns. So we have the column full name. Okay, inside that, first of all, we have the template for the header cell. That means we have defined this part here, the header cell. Like we have shown here, we have this element mat header cell. In order to apply characteristics of header cell, we will apply this directive here, mat header cell def. Now let's define the template for body cell or cell which contains the actual data. For that, we will use this element here, mat cell. In order to apply characteristics of the data cell, I will apply this directive here, mat cell def, and which is set to this expression let element. That means when Angular Material render this mat table, it will do in an iteration based on the data collection that we have provided here. On each iteration from this collection list data, inside this element we will have an object containing current row that I can show you here. For that, I will use the string interpolation element, and we have to convert that into a JSON. So I will use this JSON pipe here. Now let me save all of these modifications here. I have already running this application in my browser, but still in our parent component we are running employee component. Instead of that, we have to replace that with employee list component. Use employee list component. Save, then back to the application. Here we have an Angular Material table containing one column full name. Inside the body, we have shown a JSON object representing current row data. Instead of the complete object, we need full name only. Dot full name. Save, then back to the application. That's it. Now we have to do the same for rest of the columns. Now we understood how we can define template for both body and header. Now let's define template for remaining columns. So first of all, we have the email, then we have mobile and city. Save, then back to the application here. It looks same as before. Can you guess where we went wrong? Yes, it is related to the array which we have defined here, displayed columns. Inside that, we have to define these column names, email, mobile and city. Currently it contains only one item which is full name. So I will add the column name for those columns, then save, back to the application. So with this array itself, displayed columns, we can change the appearance of the table. Means we have already defined template for these 4 columns inside these 4 ng container here. In order to hide any of these columns, you just need to remove that column name from here, then save, back to the application. Here we go. We have only 3 columns, full name, mobile and city. Now if you want to change the order of column inside this table, you just need to change the order of item inside this array. Save. So here we have email as the first column. Save, then back to the application. So here we have email as the first column. You don't have to change the order of ng container inside this HTML. It would be more difficult than doing here. Okay, so I hope you have understood the template in Angular Material. Now along with these normal columns here, I want to show an extra column which is for actions like edit and delete operations. So I will add the corresponding ng container here, ng container, and we have the corresponding column name as actions. Here we have the header cell template. For this column, header cell will be empty, and here we have the definition for body cell. Inside the cell we have 2 buttons, one for edit operation and one for delete operation. Inside these buttons we have one material icon. In order to work this material icon, we have to add the corresponding CSS style sheet, which we have already done in our first video inside this index.html. So here it is. Along with that, we have to add the corresponding module, which you can see inside the documentation. Go to components, then under buttons and indicators you can see icon. Then let's grab this module here, MatteInput Module. Now open material module TypeScript file, then add that module here. So here it is, MatteInput Module inside both of these arrays. Let me save all of these modifications, then back to the application here. Again, we forgot to add the corresponding column name inside the array, which is actions. Save, then back to the application. So here we go. We have two cute buttons here. We will implement their functions in next video. Now we have to add some processing or metadata information about the table. Like when there is no employee in the employees collection, we have to show no data. And during the initial rendering of the table, we will have a delay because of the delay in fetching the collection from Firebase DB. During that time, we have to show loading data. You can see the initial delay here. Let me reload this page. We have a short delay before displaying the table. First of all, I will show you how to display an indication while fetching data from Firebase DB. For that, we will add this footer element here, mat footer row. Now let's add the definition directive, which is mat footer row def, which is set to an array containing an element loading. So we have to define an ng container with column name loading. Since we have defined this element as footer, this element will be shown in footer of the table. So here we go, ng container. Here we have set the column name as loading. Inside that we can see this element mat footer cell. We have set the call span to 6. Inside that we will show this message loading data. Let me save this, then back to the application here. Now you can see the footer loading data. Always this footer will be there. That's not what we want. We have to hide that footer after rendering this complete table. For that, we will add a CSS class into this footer using a condition. So here it is. We have used this ng class directive. Inside that, we will apply this CSS class when list data is not empty. Means we have retrieved items from Firebase DB. Means when we fetch data into this list data object, inside this ng container, we will apply this hide class into the footer, so that we can hide this element here. Now we have to define this class inside style sheet here, styles.css. Here we have the CSS rule for hide class. We have added this footer CSS styles in order to position them in center. Let me save all of these modifications here, then back to the application. So here it is, and it is gone after rendering the complete table. Now let's look how we can show no data when there is no item in the Firebase DB collection. So back to the component HTML. We have to add one more footer. So here it is, mat footer row. Now we have to add the corresponding ng container here. It is exactly similar to the previous one except the column name, no data and message inside that. Now let me save this, back to the application. You can see the no data message always there. For this footer row also we have to apply the CSS class hide accordingly. So back to the HTML. So here is the ng class directive. ng class, we will apply this hide based on this expression here. So we will apply this class hide when this list data is retrieved. Means we have executed this function get employees, but there was no record. Means this list data is not null, but it is an empty collection. For more clarity, you can say number of records inside the collection is 0. So this condition here is just opposite to the situation that I have just described here. Means we have to negate this condition here. So I will enclose these conditions inside a pair of brackets and I will apply the negation operator exclamation mark. Now in order to demonstrate this situation, we can't use this Firebase DB collection employees because it already contains some records. As you can see here, if I refresh this table, you can't see that message no data. In order to show that, I will change the Firebase DB collection inside the service class here. I will add some extra characters here. We don't have a collection with this name, so there is no data. Now back to the application. We have the message no data. If you refresh the page, you can see first of all we have loading data. It will be displayed while retrieving the data. After the execution of the getEmployees function here, we have no data inside the collection. Now let me change the collection name back to the original employees. Save, back to the application. That's it. Now inside this Angular Material table, we will implement paging and sorting. Corresponding documentation can be seen here. Along with this table, we have a paginator and sort header. It's not that difficult. So back to the application. First of all, we have to import corresponding modules inside this file here. Paginator module and sort module. We have to add the same inside the exports array also. Then back to the component HTML here. First of all, let's implement sorting. For that, we have to add this mattsort directive into the mat table here. So here it is, mattsort. And then we have to apply mattsort header directive to those mat header cell which is to be sorted. So here it is, mattsort header. I will add this to remaining columns also, email, then mobile and city. Now we have to configure that inside this TypeScript file also. First of all, we will create the property sort using viewChild decorator. So here it is. In order to use this viewChild, we have to import that along with this component and on init. Also, we have to import mattsort. So this viewChild decorator will look for the directive mattsort inside this HTML here, so that we can link this property to this data source property here, so sorting will be easier. Now in order to configure this data source for sorting, we just need to do this. We will set sort property of this data source as this dot sort property. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. Something went wrong. Let me check the HTML. Here we have applied mattsort, then mattsort header for remaining columns. Full name, email, mobile and city. Yes, we have to apply this for mat header cell like we have done before. Cut and paste. Same here also. Save, then back to the application. That's it. We are able to sort the table based on these columns here in both ascending and descending order. Now we have to implement paging inside this Angular Material data table. For that, we have already imported corresponding module inside this TypeScript file here, which is MatPaginator module. Now back to the component HTML file here. In order to implement paging for a table, we need some controls like we have done inside this documentation here. Here we have a drop down to change the size of a single page, and we have few buttons here in order to change the current page. Inside that, we have to add and configure required controls. So first of all, I will add an array which determines the current size of the page. So here it is. page size options. Inside that we have 5, 10, 25 and 100. So these items will be populated inside the drop down, and then we will initialize the page size as 5. So initially page size will be 5, so in a single page there will be only 5 employees. Now we have to configure this paginator inside the component TypeScript file here, like we have done for sorting. With the help of viewChild, we will create another property paginator. Now we have to import this class MatPaginator along with this MatSort. Now we have to configure this list data for paging. For that we can do this. Paginator property of list data is set to this paginator property. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. Here we go. Currently page size is 5, so we have 5 employee records inside this page. You can change the current page using this next and previous page button here. If you want to increase the page size, you can set it as 10 here. Along with this previous and next page button, we can add 2 more buttons for navigating last and first page directly. For that, we just need to do this. Along with this page size, we have to add this directive here, show first last buttons. Save, then back to the application here. That's it. Now let's discuss filter operation. For filter operation, we don't have to import some modules inside the project, but it's not that easy like we have done for sorting and paging. We need an extra form containing a text box to enter search keywords. So back to the component HTML here. Just above the mat table div, I will add another div for the form. So here it is, div with class search div. Inside that, first of all, I will add a button. When we click on this button, we will open employee form in pop-up window to insert new employees. That can be done in next video. Now just after this button, we will have the form for text box. So here it is, mat form field, and here we have a custom class search form field. Inside that we have the text box, which is displayed using two-way data binding. So here we have ng model. We have binded that to property search key, which is to be defined inside the TypeScript file, and we have set placeholder as search, autocomplete as off, so that we don't have any prediction for this text box. Just after this text box, we need a clear button. So here it is. So this is an icon button. So we have these two directives here, mat button and mat icon button. And with this mat suffix directive, this button will be set as a suffix for this text box here. Similar example can be seen inside the documentation here. Here we are inside the input control. Let's go to examples. So here it is. Okay, this clear button is a suffix for this text box here. In order to work this two-way data binding, we have to create this search key property inside the TypeScript file here, search key which is of the type string. Also, in order to work this two-way data binding, we have to import forms module inside the parent module, which is app-module.ts file. So I will import forms module along with this reactive forms module class. Now we have to add this inside this imports array here. Let me add few CSS rules for these custom classes here, search div and search form field. Let me open the style sheet, styles.css. So here we have added few CSS rules for filter controls. Let me save all of these modifications here, then back to the application. So here we have added search controls. When we focus into this text box here, this placeholder is floating. We don't need this floating, so in order to avoid that, we can set this property here, float label is equal to never. Save, then back to the application. Here we have the clear button. We only want to show this button when this text box is not empty. For that, I'm going to add ngIf directive here. ngIf is equal to search key. Save, then back to the application. That's it. Initially, we don't have a reset button here. If I enter something inside this, we have the reset button. Now let's add a click event for this button. So here it is. We will call this function on search clear. Now we have to define this function inside this TypeScript file here. Function will be as simple as this. This dot search key is equal to empty string. When we enter something inside this search box, we have to filter employee records from this table based on the keyword entered here. For that, we will add a key up event for the text box here. So here it is. Key up, we will call the function apply filter. So here we have the function definition. We just need to do this from the mat table data source object list data. Filter property is equal to this dot search key dot trim to lowercase. That means we will remove white space from both ends, and we will convert that string into lowercase. So this assign operation will filter records from the Angular Material table based on the entered search key in the text box. Now we have to call this same function inside this clear function also. This dot apply filter. Save all of these modifications, then back to the application here. Let me try some keyword. So here it is. We have an employee with name Cedric is filtered. If you want to clear this search result, just click on this clear button here. So far we have discussed how to display a list of collection in Angular Material data table, and then we have implemented filter, sorting and paging in Angular Material. But I can't stop this tutorial here because some of you will ask how we can show department name inside this table. We can show department key because it is in the same collection employees, but department name is in another collection departments. If we were using relational database like SQL Server and MySQL, we can directly execute a query with join operation. But it's not that easy with NoSQL database like Firebase. So I will use a different approach inside this department service here. We have already retrieved all the records from department collection. So I will define a separate function here. Into that function we can pass the department key and we will return the corresponding department name. In order to do this filter operation inside this array, I'm going to install a new handy NPM package which is Lodash. So for that, let me open one more terminal here. NPM install, then -- Lodash. Hit enter. Installation is successful. So we have to import the module here. We have imported Lodash and we have set this alias underscore here. Now let's define the function. Get department name with a single parameter $key. First of all, we will check whether the key is 0 or not. Department key will be 0 when there is no department selected while inserting new employee. Otherwise, we have else clause. Inside that we will do this. We will call the find function from Lodash, and first parameter will be this array itself. Inside that we have already retrieved all the departments. As a second parameter, we have to pass a function which describes the condition for searching a record. So here it is. So here we have the arrow function with single parameter obj. Inside the function, here we have the condition. So with this function call here, it will return all departments with matching key with this key parameter here. So it will have these much properties, code and name. From that we need this department name, so we can do this. We will retrieve department name. Now we have the function ready. Now where do we call this function in order to show department name inside this table? We have created this array inside the employee list component here, inside the ngOnIt lifecycle hook. So here itself we have to add the department name. So inside this map function we have a callback function here with single parameter item. which is iterating through each collection of employees. So here we can call the function. So first of all, we have to inject the service inside this constructor. Now let's add the import statement for the service class. So hold control, then press period, then select the corresponding import statement. Now back to ng on a lifecycle hook. Inside this map function, we have a callback function with single parameter item, which is iterating through the Firebase collection. So inside this function, I'm going to define a new property, department name. In order to initialize this property, we have called getDepartmentName function from department service. Here we have passed current employee department key. We have saved the department key with this department in employees collection that you can see here, department. Inside that we have the corresponding department key. Now let's add this department name inside this object here, so that we can add that inside this array here. So we just need to do this. Property name will be department and value will be department. In short, you can pass department name. It will be saved inside the department name property. Okay. Now we have added department name inside this array. Now in order to show this column in Angular Material data table, first of all, we have to add corresponding column name here. Now let's add an ng container. So here it is, department name, and also we have set the match sort header for this column also. We have displayed the data from this new property department name. Let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. That's it. Here we have added a column for department name. Finally, I want to show you one thing. Here we have displayed 5 columns from the data source. Actually, inside this list data object here, we have more than 5 properties that you can see here. We have department key, then gender, hire date is permanent. If I search for this hire date, you can see the corresponding employee here, which is not fair in most of the case. So I will show you how to customize this filter operation into these 5 limited columns. For that, we will use the property filter predicate from the list data object, and I will set the parameter with another function containing 2 parameters, data and filter. Inside this data, we have the complete collection of employees displayed in the material data table, and here we have the filter, which is the keyword that we have entered. Inside the function, we need to restrict the filter operation into these limited columns, which we have already defined inside this displayed column array. So we can do this. We will do the sum operation inside this displayed columns. Inside the function, we will have another arrow function like this with single parameter element, and here we have the condition to select a record for the search result. First of all, we will avoid action column, and then we will search the keyword inside the columns which we have specified here. Let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. If I search for this hire date again, we don't have any record because we restricted the filter operation into these 5 columns here. Okay, that's it. You can download this project source code from the GitHub link given below in video description. In previous 3 videos, we have created a form using Angular Material, and we have submitted that form in order to insert a new record into Firebase DB. Finally, in last video, we have created a complete Angular Material data table with sorting, paging and filter operation. In this video, we are going to discuss about Angular Material pop-up. Using Angular Material pop-up dialog, when user click on this create button, we will open a pop-up like this. Inside that, we will have a fresh form in order to insert new employees. This form is created in first video, and we have submitted this form into Firebase DB in second video. In this video, we will open that form in Angular Material pop-up window. In order to close this, you can click this button here. In order to update an existing employee details, here we have the button. Click on that. It will again use the pop-up dialog. Inside that, we have a form populated with current employee details. We can make the required changes here, then just click on the submit button. Finally, we will implement the delete operation. For that, you can click on this delete button here. If you confirm the operation, corresponding record will be deleted. So here we have the same project from previous tutorial. Before continuing with this project, let's have a look in our Angular Material documentation. Go to Components, then Pop-up and Models, then Dialog. So here we have the dialog overview. Click on this button in order to see how it works. In order to work with this Mat dialog service or pop-up dialog, we have to import this module here, Mat dialog module. So first let's do that, and then we can discuss properties one by one. So back to the project, then open that specific module which is created for importing material modules. So here we have the material module.ts file. So here it is, Mat dialog module. Let me add the same in both arrays here, both imports and exports. Currently we are running this application in my browser here. First of all, I will show you how to open the form which we have already created when we click on this button here. We will open the pop-up dialog. Inside that we will show the form. So let's look how we can do that. So back to employees component here. First of all, I will add a click event for this create button here. So open the corresponding HTML here. Then I will add the click event to this create button. Now we have to define this function inside the TypeScript file here. So we have to create a function on create without any parameter. Inside that we have to open the form dialog. In order to work with Angular Material pop-up window, we have to import these two classes here. They are Mat dialog and Mat dialog config. This Mat dialog is the primary class, and this class is to configure that Mat dialog window. Okay. Now we have to inject this class inside this constructor here, dialog, which is of the type Mat dialog. Now back to the onCreate function here. Now inside this onCreate function, we have to open employee component HTML. Inside that we have designed the form for insert and update operation. In order to open that form in a pop-up dialog or pop-up window, we have to do this. Here we have the property dialog. From that object dialog, we just need to call the function open. Inside that we have to pass the component name or class employee component. Now in order to open a component in dialog window, we have to add that component in app-module.ts. So here we have the main module app-module.ts. Inside that we need to add one extra array here, entry components. We will initialize that with an array containing employee component. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. Now click on this create button here. So here we have the pop-up window. Inside that actually we have the employee form. In order to see the form, we have to increase the width of this model. In order to demonstrate that, I will just do that with inspect here. We just need to increase the width here. I will set it as 600. Here we go. So along with the width, we have to configure few more parameters about this pop-up dialog. So let's look how we can do that. For that, we will be using this class here, Mat dialog config. So first of all, I will create an object of the dialog config class here. Inside that, first of all, I will set this property as true, disabled closed. Means it will disable the feature of closing the window by clicking outside the window or by pressing escape on your keyboard. Then we will set autofocus to true. Means first focusable element inside the window will get the focus. And finally, we have set the width as 60% of the whole window. Now we have to pass this config object as a second parameter here. Let me save this, back to the application. Now let's try this create button here. Here we go. Now before showing these form controls here, I want to make sure that they have their default values. For that, we will call the function which we have implemented in our second video tutorial. So this function initialize form group will set the default values to form controls. Now when we submit this form, corresponding employee record will be inserted into Firebase DB. Along with that, we have to close this pop-up model. So let's look how we can do that. In order to close that dialog after form submission, we have to write code inside employee component because form submission is done inside this employee component. So first of all, we have to have a reference to this model pop-up. So first of all, I will import the corresponding clause here, which is mat dialog ref from Angular Material. Now I will create a dialog reference property for this employee component inside this constructor here. So here we can do this dialog ref, which is of the type mat dialog ref for component employee. When we submit that form, we will call this function here on submit. Now in order to do procedures related to closing that pop-up dialog, I will define a function here on close. Inside that, first of all, we will reset the form and we will initialize the form controls to their default values. And finally, we have called this function close from dialog reference object. Now we just need to call this function on close from the form submission function on submit. So here we go. This dot close function can be called. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. Now let me try to insert a new employee record here. Click on create button here. Now let me fill new employee details. Now submit the form. So here we have inserted the new record and we have closed the pop-up dialog. Newly inserted record can be seen here, Fiona Green. So here we have done with insert operation using model pop-up. Now let's do the update operation. For that, we have to click on this button here. We will open the form by filling this corresponding employee records inside that. Now let's look how we can do that. And here we are inside the employee list component HTML. For the corresponding edit button here, we have to add a click event. So here is the edit button, this one. I will add a click event for this button. When we click on this button, we will call this onEdit function by passing raw object. Inside this raw object, we have the complete properties related to employee that we have discussed in previous tutorial. Now let's implement this function onEdit inside the TypeScript file here. Function name will be onEdit. For this function, we have a single parameter row. Inside this function, first of all, we have to populate the corresponding employee details, which we have inside this raw object. Now we have to fill this employee details inside this form here. When we click on this create button, it will be an empty form. When we click on this edit button here, it should be populated with corresponding employee details. For that, I will be creating a new function populate form in employee service. For now, I will just call that function here with this raw parameter. Inside this function, we have to populate form group properties. So here we have the employee service. Here I will define the function populate form with single parameter employee. Now in order to populate the form, we have to update this form group here, which we have created in second video tutorial, form with corresponding employee values. For that, we just need to do this. We will call this function set value from form group. Inside this function, we have to pass that employee object containing employee details. But here we have a problem. Inside this employee object, which is passed from this employee list, we have an additional property than which we have defined inside this form group here.
All of these properties are there in the object which we have passed from this employee list. The extra property is this one, which is department name, which we have added inside this ng on it lifecycle hook here in order to display corresponding employee name for a given department key. So while populating the form using this function here, we have to omit that property before setting form group object. For that, we will make use of Lodash, which we have already installed. So here we have the import statement with alias underscore. Now we can do this. We just need to call the function omit from the Lodash, omit, and as a first parameter we have to pass the object employee. As a second parameter we can pass the property which is to be omitted. So I will copy the property name from here, department name. Let me copy this and pasting here. Now back to the edit button, click event. Here we have populated the form with corresponding employee details. Now we have to open the Angular pop-up like we have done inside this onCreate function here. So I will just copy this here and pasting inside this function here. Let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. If I want to edit this employee details here, just click on this button here. So here we have the employee form filled with corresponding employee details. Now after making required changes for update operation, same submit function can be called which we have defined for insert operation in the employee component here. Now we want to modify this function for update operation also. For that we just need to do this. We have added this if clause here. That means this insert operation will be done if the value inside the key property is null. Otherwise we will do the update operation inside this else clause here. For that we just need to call the function update employee, which we have already defined in second video tutorial. Instead of calling push function from Angular file list, we can call the update function. If you have any doubt, you can check the second video tutorial. So everything is ready for update operation also. Let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. I want to edit this employee record here. Click on this edit button here. I will add the suffix updated. Click on submit. So here we have successfully updated the employee. You can see the updated employee name here. Now let me change that back to original name. Now I want to customize this pop-up window here because we have disabled closing of this pop-up dialog by pressing escape or clicking outside this pop-up dialog. So we have to add an extra close button here in order to close manually without updating or inserting new employee record. Along with that, we have to have a pop-up dialog heading displaying insert employee or update employee based on the current operation. In order to display both heading and close button, we will be using Mat toolbar, which we have used for this Angular Material heading here. Okay, so back to the component HTML, which is here. Employee component HTML. So first of all we will add a Mat toolbar element here. Inside that, first of all we need to add the title for pop-up dialog. So here we go. We will display either modify employee or new employee based on the condition here. If the value inside the key property, which is the hidden control in the form, if it is not a null value, we will display modify employee, otherwise we will display new employee. Now after that we want to show the close button to close the pop-up dialog. So here it is. Inside the button we have a material icon. We have set tab index as -1 so that the first element which get focused after opening the pop-up dialog will not be this close button. It will be the first name itself. For that purpose we have set tab index as -1. And finally we have added this click event with onClose function, which we have already defined inside this TypeScript file here. Now in order to position this heading and close button in left and right respectively,
I will add a span to fill the space in between them. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Back to the application. Now let's try create button. Boom. So here we have the customized pop-up dialog. In order to dismiss this pop-up dialog manually, you can click this button here. Now let's try the edit operation here. Instead of new employee, here we have modify employee. Now I want to customize this close button here with few CSS rules. So back to project, then open styles.css. I will add few CSS rules here. Save, then back to the application. Now let's try once again. So here it is. Now here we have the final operation, which is delete. We can implement that using this trash icon here. So back to employee list component HTML here. Into the delete icon, we will add this click event on delete. Into that function, we will pass the corresponding employee $key value. Now let's define this function on delete in corresponding TypeScript file here. On delete with a single parameter $key. Inside that, we have to do the delete operation. For that, we have already written a function in the service class that you can see here. This one, delete employee. We just need to pass the corresponding employee $key value into the function. So here we go. This dot service dot delete employee, into that function we can pass this $key here. Let me copy this and pasting here. Since delete is a loss of data, we have to confirm the operation. So I will add this if clause here, confirm. Inside that we have to pass the message, are you sure to delete this record? If user confirm the operation, we will do the delete operation here. After delete operation, I want to show a notification saying deleted successfully, like we have shown for submission of the form with green message. We have done that green success message inside this notification service here. So I will add one more function for delete notification here. So here we have the function one with a single parameter mst. Instead of success class, we have added one class here. Now we have to add the corresponding CSS class inside the styles.css here. Here we have the CSS rules for success message. Along with that, I will add some styles for delete message also. Now let's call this one function from employee list component here. So first of all, I will create a notification service object inside the constructor here. Now we have to add the corresponding import statement for the service class. So just use the shortcut, hold Control, then press period. Then click on the appropriate import statement, then back to the function here. We just need to do this dot notification service dot one function can be called. So here it is. First of all, I will add an exclamation mark here, then deleted successfully. Let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. I want to delete this employee, delete Kelly. So click on this trash icon here, then confirm the operation. So here we have successfully deleted that specific employee. We have shown the notification message here. You can download this project source code from the GitHub link given below in video description. So in this tutorial, we are going to replace default confirm dialog with a customized Angular Material confirm dialog. It looks like this. We have created this Angular Material pop-up dialog as a result of customizing pop-up dialog in Angular Material. So here we have the same project from previous tutorial. Currently we are running this project inside my web browser here. So we just need to replace this default confirm dialog with new confirm dialog. For that purpose, I'm going to create a new component inside this project. So we can use this ng command, ng g for generate, c for component. Component name will be mat confirm dialog.
Hit enter. Newly created component can be seen here, mat confirm dialog. Now in order to work with this mat confirm dialog, I'm going to create one more service class. So G for generate, S for service. We have to create the service class inside this shared folder here. So shared, then / we have to create a dialog service class. So we just need to type dialog here. Hit enter. Newly created service class can be seen here, dialog service. I will delete this spec.ts file, which is for test purpose. We don't need that. In order to create the new confirm dialog, we are going to use pop-up dialog component from Angular Material. So in order to work with that, we have to import the module which we have discussed in previous tutorial. So here it is. We have to import this module, mat dialog module. Now back to this new service here, dialog service. Inside this service class, we will open the new customized confirm dialog. So first of all, I will import the required class mat dialog from Angular Material. Then I will inject the class inside this constructor here, dialog, which is of the type mat dialog. Then we will define a new function, open confirm dialog without any parameter. Inside that, we can do this dot dialog dot open. Inside this dialog pop-up, we have to open new component, which is mat confirm dialog. So we just need to pass the mat confirm dialog class here. As a second parameter to this function, we will pass an object here in order to configure the pop-up dialog. First, therefore, we will set the width to 390 pixels. And finally, we will disable the close feature by clicking outside the window or by pressing escape on your keyboard. Now we have to call this open confirm dialog function from this delete button click event. So we have to inject this dialog service inside the corresponding component. So here it is, employee list component. Now let's inject that dialog service here. So here we have injected as dialog service. Now we have to add the corresponding import statement. So hold Control, then press PD, then select the appropriate import statement. Now we have to modify the delete button click event, which is here on delete function. For now, I will just comment these lines here. Then we can do this dot dialog service dot open confirm dialog function can be called. Finally, we have to do one more thing. In order to open a component in pop-up dialog like this, we have to add the component class inside the app module.ts file. So let me copy this class name from here, then open app module.ts. Then we have to add that inside this entry components array here. Let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. Now click on delete button here. So here we have the new pop-up dialog. Inside that we have shown the HTML from mat confirm dialog HTML. So back to the project, then open corresponding component HTML, which is mat confirm dialog component.html. Instead of this default text here, I will add a div. Inside that, we will add another div with this custom class content container. First of all, I will add the close button for this confirm dialog box. For that, we have a mat icon with ID close icon. After that, we have the content for this confirm dialog. That can be shown inside this span here with custom classes, content span and full width. Now we have to have two buttons. In this case, question will be something like this: are you sure to delete this record or not? In order to answer the question, we have two options, yes or no. So let's add the icons here. We have the no button with ID no button, and we have the yes button with ID yes button. Now we have to define CSS rules for these custom classes here. Before that, I want to add one custom class particular to this confirm dialog here. panel class is equal to confirm dialog container. So this class will be added to the outside container of the confirm dialog. It will allow us to customize the pop-up dialog as per our choice. So let's add CSS rules for these classes. Open styles.css. So here it is. So here we have defined CSS rules for new custom classes. Let me save all of these modifications here. Now back to the application. Now click on this delete icon here. So here we have the new confirm dialog. We have to show a message inside this confirm dialog. It will be here. Are you sure to delete this record or not? Let me copy this and pasting inside this content span. Save, then back to the application. Click on delete. So here it is. Are you sure to delete this record or not? Instead of hard coding this content inside this span here, I want to pass that from this employee list component here. For that, I will copy this content question and pass through the function parameter here, open confirm dialog. Now we have to update this function, open confirm dialog. I will add a new parameter msg. Now we have to pass this parameter msg into this mat confirm dialog. That we can do with this property here, data. Inside that we have another object containing single property message is equal to msg. So here we have passed data property containing message of the dialog. In order to receive this data inside this component mat confirm dialog component, we have to do few things here. So data passed to this component through dialog will be of the type mat dialog data. So we have to import the corresponding class here. So here it is, mat dialog data from Angular Material. Now we have to inject this data into this component. So we have to import this inject class also. Now we just need to do this, add inject for this class mat dialog data, and we have the property data. Inside this data object, we have the message that we have passed from this dialog service. So now we have to show that message inside this component HTML here. So I will do that with string interpolation data dot message. Let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. Click on delete button. So here it is. Now I will add the click event for this close icon here. So back to the component HTML, mat confirm dialog component HTML. When we click on this close icon here, we will call the function close dialog. Now we have to define this function inside the TypeScript file here on close dialog. In order to close this pop-up here, we have to have the reference for this pop-up dialog. For that, we have to import the corresponding class here, which we have done in previous tutorial, mat dialog ref. Now we have to inject a property of this type here, mat dialog ref, for this component mat confirm dialog component. Now we just need to do this dot dialog ref dot close function can be called. Okay, now let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application, click on delete icon, then close this window. Now what about these two buttons, no and yes? For both of these buttons here, when we click on them, we have to close the window. For that, we can add this directive here, mat dialog close. Same for this yes button also. Now we developers must know whether user selected yes or no. For that purpose, along with this directive here, from this no button I will return false, and from this yes button I will return true. When we click on this close button here, we will close this window. Along with that, we will return false. It would be same as that of this not button here. So in order to return false from close button, we have to do this. Inside this close function, we can return false. Now how can we receive these boolean values true or false from this employee list component? We have opened this confirm dialog from dialog service. So as a result of this open function here, it will return a mat dialog ref. So we have to return that object, and we can receive that inside this employee list component here. So as a result of this function, we will get a mat dialog ref. Then we will call this function after close function can be called. So this function after closed will return an observable. So we can subscribe to that observable here, subscribe. Inside that we have an arrow function with single parameter response. So whenever user responds to this confirm dialog here, it will invoke this callback function inside this subscribe here. In order to see the response inside this callback function, I will log this response. Let me save all of these functions here. Then back to the application. Now let me open the console here. Now let's try this delete button here. I will close this window. So here we have the response false. Now let's try this yes button. So here we have the response true. Now we have the no button. So here we have the response as false. So we have to delete this record when user click on this yes button here. So in that case, response will be true. So here we can do this. We will have an if clause. If response is true, we will do the delete operation. First of all, we will delete the employee. Then after that, we will show the notification like we have done in previous tutorial. Now let me delete these codes here. Save, then back to the application. I want to delete this employee, Gavin. Click on yes. So here we have successfully deleted the employee. Now I want to position this confirm dialog in top of the page. For that, we can do this. We will use the property position and we will set the top as 10 pixel. So this dialog will be aligned with a gap of 10 pixel from top. Let me save this. Back to the application. So here we have the confirm dialog with right position. That's it guys. Here we have created a beautiful confirm dialog in Angular Material using pop-up dialog. You can download this project source code from the link given below in video description. All of the video links from this series is given in video description. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video. For awesome videos like this, please subscribe to CodAffection. Please like and share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can benefit from this. Have a nice day. Bye.